You are listening to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening Radio with Julia Griffin. To master a higher frequency for a new state of mind. Once you walked in a forest of splendor in which everything you did and everything you thought was aligned. It is possible at this time to begin to return to the old knowledge. Intuitive healer and manifestor Julia Griffin is here to talk about this unique time in history when all sentient beings, animals, plants, trees, and the earth are intent on creating this change. The wolves awakened her to the most incredible light, which opened gifts and brought knowledge that she longs to share. You are creators, and you are born to be creators of beauty, possibility, and joy. Join Julia on a journey into a beautiful and magical world where amazing possibilities exist. Let us help open the door. The Power of Inspiration and Awakening with Julia Griffin starts right now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Julia Griffin, and you're listening to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour, and let us help you experience a higher vibration and a new state of mind. If you're not familiar with me, I awakened with real wolves. When I met a wolf, it talked to me just as people talk, and they taught me to read the energy of the heart. I can intuitively hear plants, animals, and people, and I became an intuitive healer and a writer as a result. And you can find me at onetrueself.com. However, today, we're very honored to have Neale Donald Walsch as our guest. We'll talk about his new book, Letters to a Young Seeker. You already know about him, but I'll go ahead and tell you a little bit from his bio. He's the author of over 40 books on contemporary spirituality, including his latest book, Letters to a Young Seeker, Departing Thoughts from an Elder. Neale is best known as the New York Times best-selling author of the internationally acclaimed Conversations with God series, translated into 37 languages. And I want to give your wife credit as well. His wife has these beautiful poems that are among the lessons. And M. Claire is an award-winning poet and the author of Silent, Sacred, Holy, Deepening Heart, and Home Remembers Me. So welcome.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to share this time with you. How may I serve you?
Where would you like to start with your 21 insights?
Well, I think I'd like to explain to those who are listening, what those insights are. I wrote a book called Letters to a Young Seeker because, Julia, I found myself wishing that I knew when I was 21 what I knew when I was 81. And
Right.
I mean, and a lot of people, of course, have come to such an idea. If we ruminate about it, if I only knew then. But I thought, why don't I put down, in writing what I would like a 21 or a 31 or even a 41-year-old person to know and not have to wait until they're 50, 60, or 70 to kind of figure it out. So I wrote down, the 21, what I consider to be the 21 most important messages, the most meaningful messages that I received in my conversations with God experience. And so that's what the book really is. It's a 21 letters, very short letters, 6 or 7 paragraphs, they're very short letters, but each letter contains a brief explanation of one of those 21 major messages from the Conversations with God dialogue, which covers 9 books. So I rifled through all 9 books and figured out which were what I thought were the 21 most important messages. And then my sweetheart, my darling wife, with whom I've had the pleasure of spending the past 17 years, she's been an award-winning poet for years, and she allowed me to use some of her poetry in the book. So we put poems after each letter because we found poems that really applied directly to the message at hand. So that's what the book is about. And I'm happy to have the chance to help people, know about it. And maybe, even if they're older than not one of the young seekers, it's a great book to obtain, to give to a son, a daughter, or a grandchild who's going through their early years And they don't have to sit there when they're 80 and say, I wish I knew then what I know now.
Well, it's very carefully crafted. And I read the first half of it and I thought, well, this will be easy to discuss. Then I read the second half and I thought, wow, this is so deep and so esoteric. Some of these things you could go into forever. But even the beginning part, which is much more simple, you still are talking about opposites and what we're experiencing on Earth. You know, you're talking about the experiences that we have on Earth that everyone thinks, why is this happening? Or why is this happening to me? And there are actually reasons for that.
Yes, it's my thought and my experience now that I am in my eighth decade here on the planet. It's my experience that everything that occurs in life occurs as an opportunity for us to step into the agenda of the soul, which is to experience, to express through the demonstration of it our true identity, who we really are. Julia, I think that we are more than simply physical beings. I think we're more than, just a life form like a bird in the sky or a fish in the sea. I think that we are spiritual beings. And
I
I
do
think we
too.
and I think we come here to serve a spiritual agenda, which is to announce and declare our true identity as an individuation of divinity. And you know what's interesting about that thought? Virtually every great master, people we have called masters through the years, said the same thing, each in their own words, but they've said basically the same thing.
They do all basically say the same thing. There's no question about that.
So the
And
real question is, how do we use that information in our daily life to make it work as a practical matter? That's the question, and that's what the book brings an answer to.
and I don't think that we ever stop working on that, or at least that's my experience of it.
I agree with you. Right to the last moment, I think we continue to use the information. I'm not sure I would necessarily use the term we work on it because it's not work anymore. After a while, it becomes a really desirable experience and activity. It's a joy, not a work. But the
Maybe I
joy,
should say awareness.
I'm
Would
sorry.
awareness be a better word? It's being aware of yourself.
Yes, I love the word awareness. And we step into a joyful awareness and then the joyful sharing of our awareness regarding who we really are as a spiritual entity, as an individuation of divinity. If people begin to act that way in their daily lives, they can change the world that they touch. They may not change the whole planet, but you can certainly impact the world that you touch every day. Just by the way, as you're doing right now, Julia.
You too, all the time. Thank you for that. Yay, you. But I think something that is hard is that if you're an empath, and probably many, many people who are listening to this are empaths, you feel everyone else, and you have to learn how to not go up and down all the time, and that's a real awareness there.
Yes, you have to remember how well, how not to let going up and down bother you. I don't think we have to learn how to not go up and down. We have to learn how to go up and down and allow it to be simply part of the rhythm of life. Empaths are going to go up and down. A true empath, Julia, my wife is an empath. And I didn't know what it was like to live with an empath until I met her. And then I realized what it's like. She can't walk into a restaurant without feeling what's going on with half the people in the room.
Mhm.
And I hate to sound, I know this is going to sound kind of strange to people, but she goes out into the garden and she can feel what the flowers and the apple tree is experiencing.
Mhm.
She's so
And probably
empathic.
the birds and the squirrels and the trees, all of it
Absolutely.
simultaneously. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. And so when she goes out into the world now and experiencing what the environment is experiencing, she feels very sad, but she determines to do something about it, which allows her to feel expressive and meaningful in her life.
I try to dream a different dream when I see people cutting down trees. I see
Oh,
the
that's the
trees
title of
coming
your
back.
book.
Yeah.
Wow, you just gave your book a title.
Hmm. But somebody's
Dream,
got to dream it up. And I guess it goes to the empaths because we feel the pain that's out there if we don't dream up something better.
yeah. So the title of your book is Dream a Different Dream. And
No,
we're
that
going
helps.
to run out and get dreamadifferentdream.com tomorrow and put
Okay.
that. I want to see that book on the shelf by December.
Okay. How many pages?
175.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. It is a beautiful, beautiful book. And if you are spiritual on any level, if you read this book, there will certainly be something that appeals to you. One thing that I love that you put is the purpose of your life has little to do with what your mind may think or your body may desire.
Yes. Here we go again. It took me 55 years to learn that because in my 20s, 30s, and 40s, I was paying attention to what my mind and my body were, wanting.
Right.
And then I realized, life truly has nothing to do with any of that. That stuff, even if you acquire what you're wanting, doesn't last.
No.
So it's not about what my body thinks and what my mind thinks that it wants. It's what my soul wants. The purpose of life has to do, in my understanding, with the agenda of the soul. But here's what's interesting. When we pay attention to the agenda of the soul, that which the body and the mind desire come to us almost automatically, almost without effort. And that's the great secret. There was a guy who walked around the planet around 2,000 years ago who told us about this. He put it this way. He said, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things will be added unto you. Which is what I've just said in more poetic terms.
I do think there's a lot of truth in that because I had worked as assistant director in an art museum, and I thought that was really the world I wanted to go into because you're perfectly dressed, you see beautiful people, da 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 da, and then I ended up getting a divorce, and I could never quite make enough money to make ends meet. And this was when I was with the Wolves, and they would always get me to do these little readings for everyone and their pet. And then after a while, I started charging for them, and I made more money doing that. And then I had written one article that had been printed, and Drumvalo Melchizedek had a new e-zine, and he was asking for writers. I sent that article in, and they hired me. And I probably wrote hundreds of articles for them before it was done.
You see, you're a living example of what we both just understood to be true. So when we serve the agenda of the soul, all that the body and the mind imagines that it desires come to us virtually without effort.
And I mean, you could never just get a job like that. It was just the universe.
Exactly, precisely, because it's the way you've aimed the intention of your life. You started paying attention to the agenda of your soul. You started
Mhm.
realizing, as I did later in my life, for me, it came much later than in yours, because you're only like 27 right now, based on your
I'll be
appearance.
flattered.
So in any event, I didn't pay attention to any of this until I was like 56 years old. But better late than never.
Well, in your conversations with God, there were probably about 10 books during that really bad period of my life that I read over and over and over, and yours was one of them.
Well, I'm glad to hear that it brought some benefit to your life, and thank you for telling me that.
I knew it was true. I didn't know how to get to where you were at the end of the book, but I knew everything in it was true. It resonated with me.
Yes, that's the experience that many people have had, which is why I continued writing, frankly, because I wanted to help people get to where the messages brought them, that they could bring it into their life as part of their lived day-to-day experience. And that's the point, of course, of the book, Letters to a Young Seeker. It tells young people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, how they can apply, not just know about, but actually in a practical way, apply the messages that have been given to all of us in the Conversations with God dialogues.
Mm-hmm. And it's just a wonderful thing that you did. And that is leading me to God's not what we think God is.
Yes, that was one of the major messages of the Conversations with God dialogues. And of course, it's one of the big messages in the book, Letters to a Young Seeker. God may not be what you think God is. I'm certain that God is not, which is most people who believe in God, not everyone, but the largest number of people who believe in God have embraced God by what their religion tells them about God. And what most religions tell us about God is that God is judgmental, condemning, and punishing. Either you do what God wants or God will judge you. And if you continue to disregard doing what God wants, God will condemn you. And after you are condemned, you'll be punished with everlasting, by the way, damnation. Even though you've only maybe your misdemeanors, maybe your behaviors that didn't obey God's demands covered only one lifetime. But what is one lifetime compared to all of eternity? It's like sending a 2-year-old child to his room for the rest of the year for something he did at the kitchen table. So go to your room for the rest of the year. Talk about a punishment that's totally out of proportion to the offense that you could possibly have committed. So we have this misunderstanding. We think that God's love, that is, most human beings who believe in God, I observe, believe in a God whose love is transactional. It's a transaction. I love you if.
Yeah.
And so what I've offered people is a new point of view about God. What if God doesn't say, I love you if? What if God says, I love you no matter what? And I thought to myself, is it possible to live that way? I mean, could a human being actually live that way? And so I decided to try it out with my wife. I've been married a number of times. I had a number of failed relationships, not bragging. I'm really sad about it. I'm sorry that it happened that way. But when I met this particular lady, I thought, I've got to find a new way to love somebody. And so I finally was able to meet with a person and say to her, I love you no matter what. I don't love you because of what you can bring to me. I love you because of what I see across the room, whether you share it with me or not. It's not, if I love you because of what I think I can get from you, then I'm not loving you at all. I'm loving myself, simply using you as an instrument through which I can find my happiness. So I decided to love my wife in a whole different way. And now I can say to her and I have said to her every day for 17 years, I love you, sweetheart, no matter what. And she looks at me, she says, not to over romanticize it, but no man has ever said anything close to that.
I'd go with that.
Because it's not that I'm that great. It's just that God finally got her message through to me. She made it very clear to me. This is how divinity expresses love. Unconditionally. Love is not a transaction. I'll give you this if you give me that. It's not like a trade deal between nations. Love is an expression of the highest form of energy in the universe, and it comes to us from the divine without condition. I could be wrong, of course.
No, I think you're right. That's how I've experienced too. And the amount of it is just unbelievable if you can let it in.
That's been my experience. And it goes on and on and on. And I think because people are so hungry for this new understanding, this more pure understanding of God and God's love, that's why the Conversations with God books became so widely read around the world. I never imagined, I didn't sit down, Julia, to write a book when I had my Conversations with God. I wasn't thinking, I need to write a book. I was simply having a personal, sacred experience, and I never thought anyone would ever know about it. But I was told in the dialogue, Neale, you will one day make of this a book, and it will be accessed by many people. And you know what I thought when I was told that in the dial-up? That's crazy. No one's going to publish a book. No publisher. I mean, I could self-publish. These days, everybody's doing that.
Right.
But no legitimate publisher is going to publish a book because a guy on the West Coast of the United States is claiming to be talking directly to God. Come on. It's not going to happen. So I took my notes and sent them, literally Xerox, my handwritten notes, and sent them to a publisher just to test out the prediction that it would turn into a book that would be accessed by many people. Well, you know what? The publisher said, this is fascinating stuff. We're going to put this book out. I said, you're kidding me. You're not going to find 500 readers. People aren't going to run to the store to buy a book because some guy claims he's talking to God. And I was right. The book did not find 500 readers. It found 5 million. Not bragging, just saying.
Oh, no, I was just thinking about when I first saw it and I kept seeing it in the library, Conversations with God. And finally I thought, okay, I'll read it. And then after I got through the first chapter, I was like, I can't put it down. It's right. He's talking to God. I feel it.
It felt that way to me, and it's felt that way to millions of other people. So I'm going to stick with the messages that we've all received, which is that God is not what we think that God is. God is not judgmental, condemning, and punishing. God is loving eternally, unconditionally.
I think we ought to address, because people will tell me, I've prayed for this and I've prayed for this, and it didn't happen. Well, I prayed my marriage would work out and I never had to worry about money again. But if it had been that way at that time, I never would have gotten to where I am. So sometimes when prayers aren't answered, they're answered later in a better way.
Yes, yes. In fact, in the book, When Everything Changes, Change Everything, it was given to me to say, all change is change for the better. There is no such thing as change in life that's not change for the better. All we have to do is see it clearly and move into it with an understanding that there's more going on here than meets the eye, which, by the way, is the first message in Letters to a Young Seeker. Letter number 1 contains the message. There's more going on here than meets the eye.
A lot more going on. And then that takes me into energy. And interestingly enough, the wolves tell me, like right in the beginning, everything is energy. I thought, well, of course it is. I know physics. I know science. Everything is energy. And they're like, no, it's not the way that you think. Everybody and everything is emitting energy, and it has a vibration. And either the vibration is good for you or it's bad for you. You know, they made it very simple.
Yes, and my understanding is that energy attracts like energy.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever energy I project into the world is going to return to me in the way that I send it out, more often than not. That's what I wish someone had told me that when I was 21. It would literally, and this is not a joke, I mean this sincerely, I would have had a whole different experience of my 20s and 30s if someone had told me that when I was younger. But I didn't understand that until I was in the middle of my 50th year on the planet. And so, gosh. But yes, energy attracts itself in like kind.
Mm-hmm. It definitely does. So whatever you think you're interested in or doing, or who the people you're around, it affects everything.
That's my experience. I couldn't agree with you more. That's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely my experience. So I'm very clear then that the energy I want to send into the world around me is always positive, loving energy. Which brings me, by the way, to another one of the major points of the book, Letters to a Young Seeker. Point number 16, in letter number 16, understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master. God said to me, Neale, I will never forgive you for anything. And when I stand up in front of a church, I'm invited to talk to churches once in a while and to synagogues and in places, temples. places of worship and often invite me to talk about my conversations with God. And when I share with them, one of the most important messages I ever received from God was this. God said to me, I will never forgive you for anything. A place, Julia, the place goes crazy. So what's this man saying? God won't forgive you for anything? And then I said, well, stay in your seats. Don't get up and walk out yet. Let me explain. Let me share with you what I was told. The reason that God won't forgive us for anything is that nothing we think, say, or do could possibly injure, hurt, harm, damage, frustrate God in any way. Any more than a 2-year-old child could require your forgiveness. If a 2-year-old child misbehaves at the dinner table, you don't say to the 2-year-old child, it's okay, sweetheart, Grandpa forgives you. Because we know that forgiveness is not part of the equation.
No.
He's just simply acting like a 2-year-old. Well, guess what? Most humans are acting like 2-year-olds. So God doesn't have a need to forgive us. God simply has a desire to understand with compassion how we could be, do, or have what we are being, doing, and having. And then God could send us inspirations that hopefully could cause us to change our behaviors. So if we apply that kind of system, that kind of response to the human experience, then we learn understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master. If you think that you have someone in your life who you have to forgive for something they did or said, give yourself a moment to think, can I understand why? This doesn't mean that I agree with it. That doesn't mean, that I want them to repeat that kind of behavior. But it does mean that I understand how they could have done or said what they did or said. And understanding requires us to abandon forgiveness. We simply move into a place of compassion.
That's what I was thinking. I remember some book, a very esoteric book I read a long time ago on the Kabbalah. It said that grace and mercy were the oscillation that God sent to us so that we go from a lower level to a higher level. That it's by God's grace that we understand.
Precisely. That's my awareness as well.
It lifts us up in a way that we can't really do for ourselves. And when we go low enough, the universe extends that grace to us and lifts us up.
That's been my awareness. Thank you for sharing that. It's a wonderful way to put it.
Because we don't come to it just by ourselves. It comes from the universe too. It's like being able to send a thought or heal someone or help someone. Yeah, it's a little bit my energy, but it's mostly the universal energy that comes through and changes things.
But I'm going to quibble just a tiny bit with the words you used. You said we
Okay.
don't do it just by ourselves. But I think that the universe and the self are one and the same thing. I think we do it by ourselves. We simply do it with the part of ourself that we call divinity or that we call universal wisdom. So, but that's the part of the self. The whole message of conversations with God, the biggest message God gave to me was, sweetheart, Neale, 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 we're all one. There's no separation between you and me. Neale, there's no separation between you and me. When you decide to embrace the fact that you and I are one, then you can begin to live your life in a way that you had dreamt it was possible to do so.
Well, that is awakening to see that every single thing is made up of that light, including yourself.
Yes. Yes, that's been my experience. We're like a wave on the ocean of divinity. God said to me, Neale, because when I was first told this, Neale, you and I are one, I said, I don't quite understand that. Help me to grasp that. I mean, I hear you esoterically, but how do I hear you as a practical matter? How do I apply that awareness? God said, have you ever been on an ocean liner? Of course, she knew the answer. I said, yes, of course I have. And then he said, have you ever seen a wave of the ocean? Yep. Well, is the wave separate from the ocean or simply an individual expression of the ocean? So the wave is an arising, an individual expression of the ocean. And when the wave's individual, beautiful, powerful expression is complete, it recedes back into the ocean whence it came. And when God gave me that little analogy, I went, I got it. I totally get it. And
Yeah.
so then when I said to God, I get it. I love the analogy. Thank you for sharing that with me. God said, okay, then go out there and make waves.
And that really happens all the time if you can see it, because when people get to a higher point in consciousness, there's more light in the particles of their being. And when there are enough particles of light, it forms new waves and new experiences on a higher frequency.
As the French would say, voila.
That's an amazing and beautiful thing. It really is.
Another powerful message from the book Letters to a Young Seeker came in the last letter number 21. And we are advised that the most powerful way to experience what we wish to experience is not to be a seeker, but to be the source. You know what's interesting, Julia? Most of my younger life, I was told by authoritative sources
Mhm.
that I should be a seeker. I should be seeking wisdom, seeking clarity, seeking understanding, seeking God for that matter. I should be a seeker of, whatever it is that was good in life. So I thought it was really good to be a seeker. And I actually announced myself to some people, I'm a seeker, you know, and then God said to me, no, 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 don't be a seeker. If you're a seeker, you'll be forever searching for and looking for what it is you wish to experience. Be the source of it in the life of another. That was an incredible, incredible message that I got from God. He
It's
said,
a
Neale,
beautiful message.
whatever you wish to experience in your life, you want more companionship, you want more humor, you want greater wisdom, you want deeper insight, you want a connection with God, you want, for that matter, more sex, whatever it is you want more of, be the source of it in the life of another, because what flows through you sticks to you. And in fact, it turns out that what you give to others, you wind up giving to yourself for an elegant reason. There's only one of us in the room.
Right. So explain that.
There's nobody else here. We are all one. What I do for you, I do for me, because there's no disconnection between us. You're simply another expression of the oneness of which I am an expression. Which is why that guy who was walking around the planet 2,000 years ago also said this. He made it very simple and very clear. He said, guys, just do unto others as you would have it done unto you. Because it is being done unto you. Because there's nobody else in the room. We are all one. If we embrace that understanding on this planet, life on Earth would change overnight.
All the pain would go away. It reminds me of a child I know very well. When she was 14, first year of high school, there was a guy who was, I want to say 12, but he was so far ahead they let him in high school. And she called me up because she couldn't stop crying because they took his shoes and his glasses and she didn't know what to do. That's an example of how much we feel other people's pain.
Yes, it's exactly my experience as well. Wow.
And it's just we have to help with it wherever we can, because good example here, the monks have been marching, I guess 2 or 3 hours away from me to go to Washington, D.C. And I looked at them and enjoyed seeing them on Facebook. And then when they were closer, I got their peace. I was like, wow, the whole outer world of politics just disappeared. All there is this peace that I want to breathe in and I want to be a part of. And that's what, only probably 100 people? Yeah,
Yes, imagine what would happen if the largest number of people, if we ever reach critical mass
right.
regarding the number of people who start to think the way we're now discussing, the world really would change overnight.
I mean, I could
So
just feel it flow through me, like into the walls, into the trees, all around me. That's just 100 people with their minds on one thing.
amazing.
Yeah, and I could see these children. I mean, they have like 1,000 people that walk with them every day for part of the way. But when they would do their stops, all the children would just beam when they saw them.
Yep, I understand. I can hear that. Now, as a member of the media for 25 years of my life, I spent my life in the broadcasting industry. I have to notice it's time now for our mid-program break.
Right.
I know I'm right.
You are right. Let me
So,
just say, I'm Julia Griffin. Um, I'm here with Neale Donald Walsch, and we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. And he will share more illumination and wise words with us when we come back. So stay tuned.
With Esther Graham honors all women far beyond a single day of celebration. Regardless of your race, gender, sexual orientation, or religion, Esther helps you rise to your full potential to live fully in God's plan and to do what you were divinely created to do. Festa Della Donna offers programs that help you fulfill your dreams and desires. For more information and to get your free copy of the Festa Della Donna Retreat Self-Care,
we remember a time when you could simply form a thought and it would manifest. The harmony was forgotten, but it is returning now. The Power of Inspiration and Awakening Radio with Julia will take you on adventures through the heart and spirit, exploring who we once were and how to awaken that power today. Julia studied under the guidance of wolves, learning from their wisdom to master a higher frequency for new state of mind. Learn to master the secrets of manifestation. Visit OneTrueSelf.com.
Tune into the Dr. Diane Show, where we explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul every Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on TransformationTalkRadio.com. I bring over 20 years of expertise as a mindset warrior, perspective shifter, and unshakable optimist dedicated to helping you reach your wildest dreams in business, health, performance, and relationships. Join the discussion on the show. Learn more about me, Dr. Diane, and receive a free digital copy of my magazine at naturalnutmeg.com.
Welcome back. This is Julia Griffin, and I'm here with Neale Donald Walsch, and he is sharing some very illuminated thoughts about his new book, Letter to a Young Seeker. So stay with us, and we'll go more deeply into it. It's quite an amazing book, really deep. If you're listening to this, then certainly you can get a lot of it out of it. So one of the favorite questions that I have, that you have here, is how long will it take and what will it take for your own evolution to get to the point where you're released from the pain, the stress, and the strain of everyday life?
And the answer is different for every person.
Of
You know,
course.
some people get there, in a year and a half, and some people get there in 20 years. And, good old me, believe it or not, it took me 53 years to get to a place where I could open to some of the levels of awareness that we're talking about now. So I wish there was a one size fits all answer to your question. But there isn't. It's different. How long will it take? Well, it takes as long as each individual chooses for it to take. But here's what's interesting. And from my awareness, a person can decide how long they want it to take. A person can choose to open to the levels of awareness that we've been discussing here on this program, and to open to a sense of who they truly are and the best way to demonstrate that in their day-to-day life. All we have to do is...
I think that's true, because I kept saying, what would it be like to awaken now, when I had that initial awakening, and then I met the wolves right after that.
Yes. So my favorite prayer is, thank you, God, for helping me to understand who I really am, and that every problem that I'm confronting has already been solved for me.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I think one thing people say to me a lot is, well, when once you're awakened, everything's straightened out. I'm like, no, because you're still evolving.
Yes, but it has straightened out in the sense that it all leads us to the next step in our evolutionary process.
Right. We're not just down there being stuck in the problems we had before. We're up to things that help us open ourselves up more.
Yeah, and evolution requires us to embrace certain revolutionary ideas. As an example, in the book Letters to a Young Seeker, in letter number 17, we're told there's no such thing as absolute right and wrong. There is only what works, and what does not work, given what it is you're trying to do. Why didn't somebody tell me that when I was 25 or 30 years old?
I know.
But at least we put it in a place where people who are now in their 20s, 30s, and 40s can receive the information. Guys, folks, there's no such thing as absolute right and wrong. You know, what we thought was absolutely right 150 years ago, we consider wrong today.
Mm-hmm.
And just the opposite is true. What we consider wrong 25 or 30 years ago or 50 years ago, we consider right today. Let me give you an example. In the earlier part of my life, you know, I considered it wrong to be intimate with a person, to have sexual experiences and romantic liaisons, unless you were married. And then something happened in the 60s and in the 70s, 1970s, where people started saying, you know what, you should try living together for a little while first before you get married. Just give it try it out to make sure you don't make a huge mistake. Oh, so it's okay to live with a person, be intimate with that person without marrying them, which was only the exact opposite of what I was told in my 20s, 30s, and 40s. So you know what? There is no such thing as right and wrong. There is only what works, given what it is you're trying to do. So what we really need to be clear about it, and you know, my friend Julia, this is what I observed that I was not clear about in the early part of my life, and that many people are not clear about today. We're not clear of what it is we're trying to do. If you walk down the street with a clipboard and say to people, "I'm taking a survey. Would you mind, participating in an opinion survey?" The average person would say, "No, go ahead. What's your question?" I'd say, "What do you think that humanity is trying to do?" And the average person will look at you like you've asked them a crazy, silly question. Mm-hmm. They said, "I don't think that humanity knows what it's trying to do. We don't know what we're trying to do," which is why we keep on behaving the way we're behaving.
Right. And it just takes me back to so many times when people will say, if only I were healthy, if only I had the perfect relationship, if only I had more money. And they lose a lot of life that way unless they're like meditating on light or meditating on being at a higher level. They're just going to get there and then they're not going to be happy. Or like a car, a new car is always wonderful to have. But after a while, it's just a car.
Yeah, exactly. After about 2 weeks after
At least 2 months.
It's in the driveway, and then you go, "Okay, what was the big deal?"
I know.
What was the big deal?
Yeah, there's a thrill, and then you come back to being you.
And that's what is discussed in the letters to the young seeker. What's called the be, do, have paradigm. God said to me, "Neale, it's about the be, do, have paradigm. You've had it reversed most of your life, Neale. You think that it looks this way. If you have what you want to have, then you can do what you want to do, and then you can be what you want to be. If you have good grades, you can do the thing called graduate, and you can be a success in your career because you've got a degree. If you have enough money, you can do the thing called buy a car, or you can do the thing called buy a house, and then you can be the thing called safe and secure." And that's the way most human beings live their lives.
It is.
And we were given, and then God said to me, Neale, you've got it backwards. It's not have, do, be. It's be, do, have. Step into a place of beingness first. Decide you are secure. As an example,
Right.
I am secure. And of course, I had to argue with God naturally. I said, wait a minute, how can I be something if I don't have what I need to have in order to be that? And God said, you don't understand. What attracts to you, what you want to have, is your statement that you are already being it. That's why you're called a human being, not a human doing. So decide to be happy, decide to be joyful, decide to be secure. And for that matter, decide to be loving in the purest way, where you can look at the person on the pillow next to you and actually say to them, I love you, no matter what.
Well, everybody feels that way. Not everybody, but most women feel that way when they have a baby.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's just such a shock. I said that to my mother, and she said, there's no way I could tell you that you would feel that way. She said, you just have to experience it.
The question is how to hang on to that experience when a person turns 45 or 56 or 72. How can you still love them the way you loved the baby in your arms?
Mm-hmm.
Which is why, by the way, it's not a coincidence. It's not happenstance that we call those we deeply love baby. Hey, baby, come here.
Right.
Hey, baby, I love you. Here's to you, baby.
Mm-hmm.
We
We're recalling that.
We call each other baby because we are recalling what we felt when we had an actual baby in our arms.
Like Wordsworth said, they come into this world trailing clouds of glory.
Bingo.
And it's still out there, but some of the time we need books like yours to remember.
And what we have to know is not to require what we desire. That's my favorite little poem. God gave me that poem. God said, Neale, don't require what you desire. Because if you require what you desire, then if you don't receive what it is you desire, you're going to be unhappy in your life. So do not require what you desire. Simply allow yourself to move into the experience of desiring it, but not requiring it for it to be the source of your happiness, your
Joy,
joy,
not just
your joy.
happiness, joy.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's a gift from the universe as opposed to, God, why haven't you given me this? Or how soon will you give me this?
Yes, exactly. So I learned that way too late in the game in my life. Do not require what you desire.
But hey, you've got it now.
Finally.
Yeah, that's a lot to have, I think.
And that's why we put the book out, Letters to a Young Seeker, so that young seekers could have it when they're in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. And they don't have to wait until they're in their 70s or 80s.
We need people with those peaceful vibrations to take us there. Well, one thing I wanted to ask you is, what is the difference between pain and suffering?
Well, that's another point in the book, by the way. We discussed that pain and suffering are not the same thing. And I wish someone had told me that when I was 27, because I thought they were the same thing. When I have pain, I have suffering.
Right.
But I was told in my conversations with God, no, sweetheart. Pain is a physical or emotional phenomenon. It's real. It's very real. It's not made up. You're not making it up.
Right.
You're either feeling emotionally or physically painful, or you're not. But suffering is an announcement that you've made a decision that you shouldn't be experiencing the pain. That what's occurring should not be occurring. And so you wind up suffering. We talked earlier, just a moment ago, about woman in childbirth. And God said to me, that's a perfect example. Many women in childbirth experience pain during the birthing process, but they don't experience themselves as suffering. In fact, some of them are crying tears of joy while they're experiencing the pain because they understand that the pain is part of the process by which new life is being given. Wow. When we understand the pains of our life, of my own life, are giving me a chance to birth new life within myself, everything changes. So I can experience emotional or physical pain, and not experiencing suffering does not necessarily have to be a part of that.
That's beautifully said. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking the question, because it was a major turning point in my life. Julia, I've had open heart surgery in my life. I remember when the doctor said to me, "You need open heart surgery. You don't need a triple bypass. You don't need a quadruple bypass. You need a quintuple bypass."
Wow.
I said, "What are you telling me?" He said, "I'm telling you that every artery to your heart is blocked. You need open heart surgery, and not in 6 months. Now." I said, okay. And I went into the operating room, but as they were wheeling me in from the, where they have you in the holding room into the operating suite, they had me on the cart, of course, and the doctor said to my darling wife, he looked at her and he said, 3 minutes, just 3 minutes, we've got to get him in there. She said, okay. So she's walking with me as they roll me in. And she said to me, "You seem awfully calm. Aren't you even a little bit scared?" I said, "Sweetheart, what's there to be afraid of? Either I die on the operating table and the operation is a failure, and I go home to God, or the operation is a success and I go home to you. Either way, I'm in heaven."
What a beautiful answer.
She looked at me, she said, "Only you could be romantic at a time like this."
Well, that's a wonderful thing to say about anyone.
I said, I wasn't trying to be romantic. I was telling you the absolute way I really feel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm either at home in the
Oh, I
arms
can
of
feel
God.
it when you say it. You meant it. I feel it.
Yeah. So that's been my experience. I've made a decision that pain is not necessarily suffering. I see that pain is simply a birthing process. Another part of me wants to be birthed.
Right. And I suppose we should all have faith in that and in our own ability to step into that universe that's being born for us.
Yeah, we shouldn't. I'm going to quibble with your words again. You said, and I suppose we should all have faith in that. I would never use the word should. We are invited to all have faith in that. But God said to me, "Neale, don't should on yourself."
Right. I think that's a Baptist thing, but I'm trying to get beyond it.
Yeah, me and my Catholic upbringing, the same thing. I went through the
Yeah.
whole mortal sin, venial sin. You got to believe in God in a certain way, or God's going to send you to hell. And come on, come on. We really believe in a God who says to the billions of Muslims and the billions of Jews and the billions of Buddhists that God says, if you don't come through the right doorway, I'm going to slam the door in your face and you're going to hell. This is the God we believe in? No wonder the world is the way it is, because we believe that love is transactional.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we love each other. People of different races, different religions, different political persuasions.
Or just
even
look at
people
the
of different
children.
genders.
They even believe if the children aren't baptized that
Yeah,
they don't count.
exactly. And I finally asked God, "Are you telling me that a 2-week-old child who hasn't been baptized and happens to die in an automobile accident can't go to heaven because they were not baptized? Is this the God you want me to believe in?"
No,
And
that was my break with it.
I finally said to God, "Not going to happen." And God said to me, "I never asked you to believe in me that way.
Mm-hmm.
People did. other men in particular who wrote the earliest scriptures, wrote down those messages, but they were inaccurate. God does not love you as a transaction. God loves you without condition. And of
Back to
course,
that unconditional love that there's no end of. That's
course,
absolutely infinite.
a two-way gold baby would be welcomed back into heaven.
Yeah. And the critical mass where we all move into peace at one time. Can you imagine? Again.
I think it's possible on this planet if we can get enough people to be moving in the same direction at the same time, in the direction of pure love.
Right.
And I think we can do it. Thanks again. Forgive me, but I'm not pandering to you. I'm just saying thanks again to people like you who are placing these messages in front of others in large numbers. God bless you.
Well, it's partially because of you and your book. So thank you for that.
We thank each other. And now we can turn around and share the messages with all those whose lives we touch.
So we're coming to the end here, folks. I think we had a great talk. For those of you who want to go back or listen to it again, it will be available. And Neale, thank you from my heart. Namaste.
Thank you for inviting me. And
Great pleasure.
ask me if there's one final message I want to leave.
Is there one final message you want to leave?
Strange you should ask. The one final message I would leave is the most important message God gave to me. She said, Neale, your life is not about you. It's about everyone whose life you touch and the way in which you touch it. And when you understand that, your life will change overnight.
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to share this time with you.
Great joy, and sending some love to you again. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening Radio with Julia Griffin to master a higher frequency for a new state of mind. Join us next time as Julia takes us deeper into the memory of the moments of light where transcendence and enlightenment emerge. The memory of the jewel of consciousness is always lived within you to tap into waves of energy and create huge changes by imagining the beauty of the vision and desires that are hidden in the heart. Learn to find your way back to nature, beauty, and your own heart, which holds the secrets of your existence and future. To discover more about Julia's adventures, animal communication, and the teachings she brings to every show, visit onetrueself.com. That's onetrueself.com. That's ONE, trueself.com.